My name is Alexander Thorne, but everyone on Wall Street just called me Alex. By the time I was 30, I was a partner at one of the most aggressive hedge funds in New York City. My world was defined by three things: the speed of light, the zeros in my bank account, and the utter absence of sentimentality. I traded billions, commanded a team of 30 analysts, and lived in a glass penthouse overlooking Central Park, a tangible monument to my own self-made divinity. My childhood was privileged but cold. I was taught early that money was the only metric of success, and power was the only real currency. Emotional weakness was a fatal flaw. I didn't pursue physics like Ethan. I pursued finance because I saw it as the purest application of cold, rational logic to human desire. I wasn't just wealthy, I was a god in my small, high-altitude kingdom. I had the private jet, the black Amex, the yacht, the tailored suits, and a calendar packed with so many back-to-back deals that I barely had time to sleep. My belief system was simple and unwavering. The market is God. It is merciless, it is objective, and it rewards those with the clearest vision and the sharpest instincts. Any talk of morality, compassion, or a higher power was dismissed as noise that interfered with the optimization of capital. I was a devout capitalist atheist, and my temple was the New York Stock Exchange. Yet, like the princess in her palace, I was profoundly isolated. My relationships were transactional. My success was a constant game of defense, knowing that every single person in my orbit, my colleagues, my competitors, even the women I dated, wanted a piece of my success, or worse, wanted to take it from me. I had achieved the pinnacle of my ambition, and the view from the top was barren. The rush of making a successful trade was addictive, but it lasted only until the next morning. The emptiness was a low, constant vibration beneath the roar of my success, a truth I drowned out with more work, more acquisitions, and louder celebrations. I was a king in a cage built of solid gold bars. The only thing I didn't own was my own soul. The disruption came not from a moment of reflection, but from a mandate from the top. My firm, Dominion Capital, was under scrutiny. The press was circling, labeling us vultures for a recent, aggressive takeover. To manage the optics, the firm decided to launch a highly publicized corporate social responsibility (CSR) initiative. My senior partner, Marcus, forced me to lead it, a 6-day, highly scripted trip to a small, impoverished region in rural Haiti, ostensibly to launch a micro-loan program. I hated every second of the planning. I saw the trip as nothing but an extravagant, necessary lie, a financial drain for PR benefit. I packed my best performance wear, a briefcase full of complex financial models, and a cynicism so thick it was almost palpable. When we landed, the heat and the reality of the poverty were shocking. It wasn't the picture-perfect, sanitized poverty of a charity pamphlet. It was raw, pervasive, and overwhelming. I was there to talk about interest rates and collateral. They were talking about water, food, and malaria. The locals we were meant to be helping were partnered with a small, persistent Christian nonprofit called Anchor House. The director was a woman named Chloe, a former corporate lawyer who had given up a partnership track to live and serve there. She was radiant, grounded, and utterly unintimidated by my designer suit and my billionaire arrogance. My initial interactions with Chloe were pure confrontation. I critiqued her operation as inefficient and emotionally driven. I told her she needed to focus on generating ROI, not saving souls. "Alex," she said, looking me straight in the eye as we walked through a muddy village path. "You measure success by what you take from the world. We measure success by what we are willing to lose for the world. You've never seen a miracle because your spreadsheets only account for the expected. You never factored in grace." That word, grace, hit me like a market crash. It was an anomaly my models couldn't predict. It was an unearned benefit. That evening, I sat in the stifling heat, unable to sleep, watching Chloe and her team. They were exhausted, dealing with a typhoid outbreak and a failed water pump, yet they were singing. They were praying. They were tending to the sick with a joy that was completely illogical. I had access to unlimited resources, and I had never felt that kind of peace. They had nothing, yet they seemed to possess everything. One afternoon, a local man named Gene, who was running the community's small pig farming co-op, brought me a gift, a beautifully carved wooden cross. I had spent the week dissecting his loan application, judging him on his credit history. "Why?" I asked, completely thrown off balance. "You don't owe me anything. Your loan is still being processed." Gene, who had lost his home in the earthquake and still sang hymns every morning, smiled. "It's not for the loan, sir. It's for the journey. We pray for the man who gives so much to get so little back." I realized he wasn't talking about my money. He was talking about my soul. Back in my air-conditioned hotel room, I opened my briefcase, not for my financial models, but for the Gideon Bible I hadn't even noticed. I started reading, intending to find the logical inconsistencies, the historical inaccuracies. Instead, I found the story of a man who willingly forfeited every earthly advantage, popularity, comfort, security, to pay a debt for people who actively hated him. I, who valued every transaction to the penny, was confronted by the ultimate, non-negotiable, unilateral contract of atonement. The radical self-sacrifice of Jesus was the ultimate anomaly in my economic model. The 6 days ended, and I returned to New York, physically unchanged but internally fractured. The roar of the trading floor, once my symphony, now sounded like a chaotic, desperate noise. I tried to integrate back into my routine, but the images of Gene and Chloe wouldn't leave me. My billion-dollar deals looked cheap next to the simple joy of giving a child clean water. My conflict peaked during the negotiation of a massive acquisition deal, the hostile takeover of a family-run pharmaceutical company that produced a life-saving but low-profit drug. Dominion Capital's strategy was ruthless: buy the company, liquidate the unprofitable R&D and charity branches, hike the drug price by 500%, and package the assets for a quick, obscene profit. It was a classic Wall Street move, perfectly legal, perfectly evil. I was the architect of the deal. I knew exactly how to execute the financial maneuver to make billions for the firm and hundreds of millions for myself. The documents were on my desk, ready for my signature. The signing ceremony was set for 9 a.m. on Monday morning. I spent the weekend in my penthouse, unable to escape the silence. I wasn't wrestling with a theological problem. I was wrestling with a moral, existential truth. The Bible told me, what good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Matthew 16:26. I had spent my entire adult life trying to buy the whole world. The signing of this paper was the final installment payment on my soul. Sunday evening, I drove down to a small, unassuming church I had seen advertised near the Lower East Side, a place far removed from my gilded world. I sat in the back. The pastor spoke on the story of the rich young ruler. Sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. I felt personally targeted. I wasn't just rich. I was a ruler of capital. The message was crystal clear: my kingdom or his. I went back to my office at midnight. I pulled up the acquisition documents and looked at the signature line. The potential profit was $1.4 billion. My bonus alone would be $280 million. The next morning, I was supposed to shake hands, sign the papers, and walk away with more money than my Haitian community had seen in a decade. At 8:45 a.m., as the lawyers, executives, and Marcus were gathering in the mahogany conference room, I walked into Marcus's office. "Marcus," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I cannot sign the papers." He looked at me as if I had spoken in tongues. "Alex, this is a billion-dollar deal. You're serious?" "Why?" "The numbers are clean. The legal risk is minimal." "The risk is minimal to the firm, Marcus. The risk is maximal to my soul," I replied. "I'm not doing it. It's fundamentally predatory. The drug price hike will kill people." The immediate reaction wasn't calm discussion. It was a thermonuclear explosion of rage. Marcus's fury was spectacular. He didn't just fire me. He vowed to ruin me. "You've gone soft, Alex. You've gone religious. You're a liability, an emotional variable we can't afford. Get out, and don't expect a severance. In fact, expect a lawsuit for breach of fiduciary duty." Within the hour, I was escorted out of the building by security, the same security who had held the elevator for me moments before. My access codes were deactivated, my firm phone wiped. I was stripped of my partnership, my bonus, and my professional identity. The news spread like wildfire through Wall Street. The consensus was a mixture of pity and contempt. Alex Thorne had finally cracked. He threw away a 9-figure fortune over a sudden fit of morality. The disownment was swift and absolute. Just like Rui's from her family, but mine was from the family of capital. My former colleagues avoided me like a toxic stock. My friends vanished, seeing me as a dangerous failure, a man who willingly chose bankruptcy of purpose. I sold the penthouse, the cars, the jet shares, everything tied to that life. The sudden, stark reality of not being that guy was terrifying. I moved into a small, rented apartment. My life reduced to a fraction of its former size. I was paralyzed by the pain of loss and the profound shame of being branded a failure by the only people whose opinion I had ever valued. The darkest moment came when I was served papers for the lawsuit. Dominion Capital was suing me to claw back my past bonuses, claiming I had acted against the firm's interest due to mental instability brought on by a sudden, irrational religious obsession. I was sitting alone in my small apartment, facing financial ruin, legal battles, and total isolation. I had traded the whole world for an empty promise, or so my old, cold, calculating mind screamed at me. I fell to my knees, not in prayer, but in despair. "God, if you are real, this is too heavy. I was a king, and now I am nothing. Was it worth it?" The rescue came in the form of a phone call from Chloe, the director of Anchor House in Haiti. She had heard the news through a friend in the nonprofit world. She didn't offer a job or financial help. She offered community. "Alex," she said, her voice warm over the long-distance line, "the firm tried to steal your soul with money. They failed. Now, let's build something that money can't buy." She invited me to stay at the small guest annex of Anchor House. I accepted, fleeing the noise and legal pressure of New York. In Haiti, I traded my tailored suits for work boots. I traded my billion-dollar spreadsheets for the real-life work of building things that mattered: a schoolhouse, a new well, a simple meal for the elderly. I was no longer Alex Thorne, the financier. I was just Alex, a volunteer, often covered in mud, finally finding peace. The people I once looked down upon as recipients of my charity became my teachers. They had nothing but each other and their deep, abiding faith. They laughed more genuinely than anyone I had ever known on Wall Street. My conversion happened not in a church, but in the trenches of service. I was baptized in the ocean near the village where Jean lived. As the waves washed over me, I realized the ultimate truth. I had spent my entire life trying to be the most valuable man in the room. But only through Christ did I realize I was already infinitely valuable to God, despite my failures, not because of my achievements. I had been reborn into a community that valued the broken over the perfect, the servant over the CEO. This was my new family, bound not by blood or contract, but by the love of Jesus Christ. After 6 months of healing and service, I returned to the U.S., not to reclaim my old life, but to utilize my unique, high-level skills for a new kingdom. Chloe and I co-founded a revolutionary new nonprofit called Ecclesia Ventures. Our mission was to apply high-level financial modeling and ethical investing principles to the world's most intractable poverty problems. We weren't just giving away money. We were building sustainable, ethical economic ecosystems based on Christian values. My old, cold capacity for complex analysis became the engine of hope. I developed risk management models that allowed churches to safely invest in micro-businesses in high-risk areas. I used my knowledge of global markets to ethically raise capital for infrastructure projects that brought clean water and education to communities. I was using the same mind, but the objective had shifted from maximizing profit to maximizing human dignity. I was no longer paid in millions, but I was paid in purpose. The lawsuits dragged on for years, a constant reminder of the war I had fought. But in the end, I won. Not through cunning, but through the honesty and integrity I had finally found. One day, I got an email from a former intern at Dominion Capital. He had seen my story. He was still in the system, but he felt trapped by the greed. He asked me, "How do I get out?" I wrote back, "You stop calculating the cost and start calculating the worth." The world offered me $280 million to lose my soul. Jesus offered me my soul back for free. Which investment has the better return? You must be willing to lose your kingdom to find the kingdom of God. The irony is not lost on me. I gave up the world of billions to find the true, eternal, uncalculatable treasure in Jesus Christ. My life is now a testament that the most valuable asset you can possess is a clear conscience and a secure relationship with the King of Kings. If God can redeem a cold, cynical financial predator like me, He can redeem the most broken part of your life. What is the one thing, that power, that title, that possession you are holding onto that is preventing you from trading it all for the priceless peace of Jesus Christ? Surrender your ledger to Him. The return on investment is eternal.